Terraria has 4 different classes and they all play in different ways, with Summoner being the most unique out of all of them. And I hate it. It's been almost a year since I've talked about Terraria, and today I want to get this video out there and return to my roots with Summoner. Armor sets. Armor sets are one of the positives I have about the Summoner class. By hard mode, unlike everyone else, Summoner continually has unique ways of getting their sets, be that at the start with Spider Armor, and later with Forbidden Armor, then afterwards Tiki, maybe Spooky Armor, and finally, like everyone else with the Lunar Pillars, Stardust Armor. You always have to go to different places, unlike most other classes which just rely on linear ways of getting armor, like hard mode ore sets or the chlorophyte sets, which can suffice for up until the Lunar Pillars. Of course, post-Terraria is when each and every class gets some more variety when it comes to armor sets, but in comparison to Summoner, they have the best variety throughout the entirety of the game. Whips. Whips to me at least are awkward weapons. Of course the general concept sounds cool. You have to get in close to do extra focus damage as a class that doesn't have much defense in the first place. But the way this sort of gimmick can be enforced by nature is limited. Each and every whip works in the exact same way, and the only difference are whip speed, range, and whatever special effect they make. Though this isn't enough distinction for the entire game, as you'll just be spacing against bosses the entire time. Usually, I like this since I'm a massive fan of true melee. But to me, this works because there are a large variety of true melee weapons, be that spears and swords, meaning that you'll never be bored when doing this challenge, and the main source of damage are your melee weapons. But with whips, this isn't the case, as it's more of a support tool that's not 100% necessary to use when beating bosses or fighting enemies. Whips throughout the whole game just feel like a gimmick weapon that become a little boring to use later on, and it doesn't help that there's only one whip-centric set that turns these into true weapons. I could definitely see Spooky Armor being rebalanced to be whip-centric, as that's already a set that's highly damage focused, though in the game now, they remain as relatively uninteresting weapons added to a class that felt like the worst to play already. Effectiveness. With Summoner, the only thing it has over other classes are the summons themselves. They attack things for you, which can be useful when mining or building, and they're powerful on their own, but otherwise, nothing's great about them, especially when we look at the better abilities of other classes. Melee has the highest, most consistent close range damage in the start, and later the highest damage at close and long range. Ranger has the best consistency throughout the entire game and is powerful while being easy to play. And Mage has the highest variety of weapon types, be that close range, long range, or even area specific. But with Summoner, again, what do we have? Summons that can attack enemies automatically, and to me that's just not enough to be interesting in comparison to every other class that we can already play in the game. The summons themselves are inconsistent gimmicks that help with defending yourself, and since this and whips are all that Summoners have going for them, it's lackluster. It's kind of like how Rangers feel powerful, but it's boring, and a similar thing is present in the Summoner class. Except, unlike Ranger, it's less dependable and your range is naturally worse, as you only have whips and summons that sometimes do what you want them to. Each and every class is far more consistent in what you can do, and Summoner, even with whips, still relies on what your summons feel like doing, despite how much damage the summons can do. Summons themselves aren't very different from how they work root-wise as well. Most are ranged and a few are melee-centric, and the ones that stay away from this formula are the Sanguine Staff, Abigail's Flower, Desert Tiger Staff, and the Terra Prisma. These summoning weapons are the only ones that change up how they work in a notable way. Otherwise, for example, using the Hornet Staff and the Tempest Staff, or the Slime Staff and the Pirate Staff, feel pretty much the same, as they do basically the same thing. Something that hammers this home especially are the Sentries, which realistically are only usable against events or in small boss arenas. Sentries just stay in one spot and do damage from that spot within their range, and if we think for half a second, how useful really is that and how much variety can be had within that niche? Not much. Most useful sentries just sit in a spot and shoot from where they are, meaning that, again, they all just feel like using upgraded versions of each other. Some work slightly different, like the Explosive Trap or Lightning Aura trilogy, but let's be real, are those items at all useful against bosses? In certain circumstances outside of events, they can be useful, like when killing enemies behind walls or simply defending against enemies while building or mining. But really, it's just an additive on what the Summoner class already does. Summons and especially sentries themselves just aren't all that interesting to use, and though the addition of whips attempted to make this issue less noticeable, it doesn't help much because, as I said previously, whips themselves are just a support weapon for your summons. Fixing Summoner? I did the same thing for my melee and range videos, so I think it's fair for me to do it here. How can we fix Summoner? My only idea would be to allow for a more whip-centric playstyle throughout the whole game by rebalancing armor sets like the Spider Armor or even the weird hollowed Summoner Armor into whip focus sets. This would add even more variety to the class, as using whips as their own powerful weapon is pretty fun. Aside from that though, I don't have any big ideas on how to make this better, like how I had with my melee class, is unbalanced video, since to me this class is kinda doomed to be the weirdo out of the bunch. Conclusion: this is by far the worst class to play in all of Terraria, be that alone or with people, because it's not that fun of a class and other classes can do what it can do better, and at either a safer distance or a closer one. There's no reason to go Summoner unless you're feeling kinda freaky and you want to play Terraria in a different way. As while I dislike this class, I can still see that the way Summoner plays is unique and different from everyone else due to its inherent defensive nature. And while there is uniqueness, it doesn't mean it's good. Hope you enjoyed this video, leave some comments if you disagreed or agreed, and subscribe because I'll make a few more Terraria videos in the future. Bye bye.